Thank you for tuning in to podcast number 46 of Sports Talk with JWock. I am your host, JWock, and today I am going to be talking about who I believe the greatest basketball player of all time is, or the GOAT is, in the NBA. So if you want to hear more about this, make sure to stay tuned. Once again, thank you for tuning into podcast number 46 of Sports Talk with JWock, and I've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and honestly, I still have not discussed who I think is the GOAT in basketball, even though I started with NBA Talk with JWock, now we're Sports Talk with JWock, but I still haven't done the GOAT debate yet, so that's pretty crazy. So I thought this is a perfect week, kind of in between a weird kind of period between, the NBA regular season and the playoffs, and then we're getting closer to March Madness, which we'll be talking about next week. Basically, let's just talk about the GOAT debate. Why not? Especially when LeBron has been on a tear lately, which that kind of gives you a little teaser on who I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking about two players who are basically debated or the most universally known as the GOATs of the NBA or just basketball in general. And a lot of people would argue these two players specifically are the GOAT in basketball, and that is Michael Jordan and LeBron James. I think those two players are universally known as the GOATs of basketball. And I just wanted to kind of give my insight on who I think is truly the GOAT of basketball. And I'm going to be doing that through a couple categories. I'm going to be going through statistically, how well have these two players played together, or not together, in their careers, in their respected careers? How have their accolades gone? How much did they accomplish in the NBA while they were in the league? And also, I just did what teammates have they played with? And I thought this was kind of fair for both players, just to be able to determine who truly is the better player. And once again, this is my opinion. You guys may have other opinions. You may think a different player other than Jordan or LeBron is the GOAT. But right now, I think those two players, in my opinion, are the top two players in the NBA. And then further on throughout the video, you'll figure out who I believe is the best of all time, in my opinion. Once again, this is my opinion. You guys may have different opinions, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion down below in the comments. But I did think that I should probably back up my reasoning as to who I think is the GOAT. So I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be backing up my reasoning. Just like in school when we had to almost defend our answer, why not? I should probably defend why I think this certain player is the GOAT. So let's first talk about just their, Michael Jordan and LeBron James build overall. So Michael Jordan was typically a two guard. He had a height of 6'6". He weighed between 215 and 223 throughout his career, and he had a 6'11" wingspan. He played 15 seasons in the NBA, 13 with the Bulls and 2 with the Wizards. And it took him 7 seasons before he won a championship. I wanted to say that just because some players take time to be able to win championships, and you can clearly see it took Michael Jordan 7 seasons to be able to win the NBA championship, which is a very coveted thing in the GOAT debate. Is how many championships have they won? I think that's very important. But anyways, then we'll go to LeBron James now, who was typically a forward. His height is 6'9". He's 250 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. He has played 22 total seasons, which is absurd. His longevity has been incredible, and it's been very impressive. He's played 7 seasons with the Cavs, and then he went to Miami for 4 seasons. Then he went back to Cleveland for 4 more seasons, and then now currently he has played for the Lakers for 7 seasons, which is crazy to me that he has played 7 seasons with the Lakers already. It feels like it hasn't been that long. And it took him 4 seasons to win a championship. So it took him 3 less seasons to be able to win a championship. So that's a good, that's a positive for LeBron's side right there. But first, let's get into the statistics. I think stats are very important when it comes to how these players, are compared. I think a lot of people like to use stats. I don't think stats are everything. And here's an example of this. What if I said Draymond Green is technically a better three-point shooter than Larry Bird, statistically? A lot of you would probably laugh at me and just, a lot of you would laugh at me and be like, okay, you're full of it, right? Well, it's technically true. Draymond Green has scored more threes than Larry Bird all time. So technically, if you want to say it, Draymond Green is a better shooter than Larry Bird. Well, nobody believes that. Everybody knows Larry Bird is a better shooter. So I think stats have a lot to do with how a player's career goes, but I also don't think it's, the big picture as to how this player truly played in their career, if that makes sense. But the major stats that I wanted to touch on are points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. I think these are the 5 most important stats. I know you could do field goal percentages and stuff, and I think that's cool. But honestly, I think these 5 are just the big important ones. And plus, if I did all those other stats, this video would take forever, and I know you guys don't want to watch that, and I don't want to record that long of a video. So let's get right into the stats. So let's first start with points. And by the way, all these stats are regular season and the postseason combined. I wanted to be able to make that known because I think adding the postseason stats as well, other than just regular season, is very important because, the postseason is just as, if not more important than the regular season, in my opinion. So let's start with points. So first for LeBron, he is the first player ever and the only player ever to reach over 50,000 points. He has 50,064 points total, and that is first all time. That is a great accomplishment. I just want to give a round of applause for LeBron. That is very impressive to say the least. And then we got Michael Jordan with 38,279 points, which is 5th all time, which is also still very impressive, especially since Michael Jordan has played 7 less seasons so far than LeBron James. So both players were very good scorers. I think we could say that. Obviously, LeBron James has the edge over Jordan on most stats, probably because he played 7 more seasons and he's in a more scoring type of, or more scoring focused league kind of right now compared to back in the 80s and 90s. But anyways, let's get into the rebounds. LeBron James has collected a total of 14,230 rebounds compared to Michael Jordan's 11,196 rebounds. Assists-wise, LeBron James dominates in this category. He has 13,562 assists, which is actually 3rd all-time on the all-time list, which is very impressive as well. Michael Jordan with 5,633 assists. As far as steals go, LeBron James has 2,810 steals. Michael Jordan wins this with 2,890 steals. And then with blocks, LeBron James has 1,421 blocks. And then Michael Jordan has 2,299 total blocks. This is very impressive for both players. Let me just look up one thing real quick. How many? Yeah, okay. Makes sense for the blocks. Yes, okay, so the blocks is correct for LeBron. I just want to make sure. That kind of felt low, but that is correct. As far as statistically goes, LeBron is really winning most of these categories, offensively at least. Defensively, Michael Jordan actually wins that, and what makes that impressive is he did play, like I said, 7 less seasons than LeBron. And obviously, like I said, it depends on the era as well. But let's keep moving on. And actually, I'm going to put up the stats right now so you guys can see them, just kind of the list, because I wanted to make sure that you guys can have a visual representation of what the stats are for each player. Next up, we have the second category onto which I think we can debate for the GOAT is their accolades, basically their accomplishments and what they accomplished in their respected careers. LeBron's still going, so obviously this could definitely change. But this is his accolades as of now, which is the season of the 2024-2025 season. He's a 4-time NBA champion with a record of 4-6. He's a 4-time NBA MVP. He's a 21-time NBA All-Star. He won the Rookie of the Year unanimously in 2003. He was an All-NBA first. He was selected on the All-NBA First Team 13 times, the All-Defensive First Team 5 times, and he has not won a Defensive Player of the Year. So honestly, you look at those accolades, that is a great career for a player that's been playing for very long. Shout out to LeBron James for being great for that long. Then we got Michael Jordan, who is a 6-time NBA champion with a undefeated record of 6-0. He is a 5-time NBA MVP. He's made the NBA All-Star Game 14 times. He was the Rookie of the Year in 1985, which I think with LeBron's class, I think LeBron had Carmelo Anthony in them, so that was a good rookie class. And then with Jordan, he had like Hakeem Olajuwon and stuff, so that was also a really good rookie class. So shout out to both of them for winning Rookie of the Year with a tough rookie class. Jordan also was on the All-NBA First Team 10 times. He was on the All-Defensive First Team 9 times, and then he also won Defensive Player of the Year once. So Michael Jordan defensively definitely has the edge over LeBron James. If we're just looking accolades and technically, statistically, Michael Jordan is a better defender. And we also have to account, like I said with the eras, I kind of counted that against LeBron at some point. Jordan played in a much better defensive era. I think we can all agree with that, in my opinion. I think a lot of people would agree with me that the defense back then was a lot better, as you can tell by like the points per game and stuff. Some may debate the players were just not as good, but I'll get there in a second. And then we go to the third category, which I think is very important, and that's basically who their teammates were. I think, obviously basketball is a very team-based sport. So if you don't have a good team, or you don't have a good teammates, then it's going to be hard to win championships. I think a lot of teams very much have talented players, but if they don't have a decent amount of help, there's some really good players in the past that have never won, like Damian Lillard on Portland. He has never gotten help in Portland. He never had really good teammates, so he couldn't really help win that championship. And I also think Damian Lillard is just not the number one guy that you want to be able to build around to win a championship, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, the teammates LeBron had that, in my opinion, are really good are Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Kyrie Irving. I'm going to include Kevin Love in this because I think Kevin Love was a hooper, man. I don't think people understand how good Kevin Love was in Cleveland and even before that in Minnesota. And then Anthony Davis, and then now his current teammate, Luka Doncic. I think all of those players are very, very much helping LeBron James for sure. And to be fair, you need, like I said earlier, you need good teammates and good help around you to be able to win championships. It just is what it is. And then for Jordan, I think his best teammates were Pippen, Rodman, and Kukoc. Some may include Steve Kerr. I don't really think there's many other players that you can really include in this because Jordan just he was like the main focus for the team. He was the main centerpiece for the Bulls when they were, a dynasty. So he only had 3 teammates, which makes it, in my opinion, more impressive. So if I were to give, based off of the 3 big categories, who wins it, I think LeBron wins the stats category. I think Jordan wins the accolades and the teammates because I think Jordan had less teammates and won more with those teammates. And he also had just better accomplishments throughout his career. He was more dominant. But LeBron has had better stats, and some may debate that is because he played 7 more seasons than Jordan. Anyways, I have some other stuff that I just kind of wanted to mention. LeBron is also playing in a 3-point heavy league. I think that they did some stat. If you take away the 3-pointer in all-time points, LeBron James is still 3rd or 4th all-time in points, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar clears everybody because there was barely any 3-pointers being shot when Kareem was playing. And when Kareem was playing early on, there was no 3-pointer. So LeBron is playing in a very 3-point heavy league. So, of course, there's going to be more scoring. There's going to be, he's going to have more points. He's going to have more assists because players are just, being able to score better because they have a 3-point line now. Like I mentioned earlier, LeBron has played 7 more seasons than LeBron. And I also think that's due to the fact that we have nowadays more medical attention. We have better technology. I think back then, A lot of players just kind of played through injuries. Michael Jordan, in like his 3-year stint, I'm pretty sure didn't miss a game when he had the second three-peat. So that's very impressive. And that just shows the toughness that they had back then compared to now, where it feels like a lot of the medical staff are trying to really limit even if it's a small injury, they might sit them out for a couple games just because, well, they don't want them to risk getting that injury. And I think that's why back in the 80s and 90s and stuff, a lot of players retired after just a couple of seasons because they were just so banged up they couldn't go anymore. Like they couldn't play as well. Like they just didn't have the technology that we have today for medically. So I think that's also why LeBron has played a lot more, is because of the medical attention. I think if Jordan had, the medical equipment and technology that there is today, I think he would have been able to play more, as well as like a lot of other players as well. That's also why like a lot of players in the modern era are passing a lot of these all-time players in points and assists and rebounds, all like because of how many seasons they played, also because of like how good they are as players and stuff. But I do think the medical thing has to do a big part of that. Sorry, that was a little bit of a weird rant. I will say this though, in their primes, Jordan dominated the best. I think Jordan was the best. You could not stop Jordan literally in his prime. He went 6-0 in the finals. You could not stop him. He had 2 three-peats in his career. And then the 2 seasons that they didn't win were because he retired. And that was when the Rockets were also really good. But in my opinion, literally Jordan, when you think of the 90s, when Jordan was truly in his prime, nobody was better than Jordan. Jordan was the dominant force, and it clearly shows. Him and the Bulls, they won 6 championships in 10 years. That's insanely impressive, to say the least. And then for LeBron's era, I think you could debate, and I would personally debate, that I think Kobe, Tim Duncan, and Curry kind of dominated when LeBron's, if you want to consider it LeBron's era. I think you could consider Kobe, Tim Duncan, and Curry the ones that dominated that era and won the most championships compared to what LeBron did. So in their respective divisions, or eras, Michael Jordan clears LeBron when it comes to that because he dominated in his respected era. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, Jordan had to play against, plumbers. And yes, a lot of people say that, and I think that's ridiculous. To call players like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, the Bad Boy Pistons, to call Clyde Drexler, Karl Malone, John Stockton, Hakeem Olajuwon, Kenny Smith, Dominique Wilkins, there's so many players I could name. Those are not plumbers. I tell you what, those players would probably play pretty dang well in the league nowadays. But just to say that is just wild to me. I also think LeBron's opponents are obviously going to have more skill. You're going to have those end-of-bench players that are going to be a lot more talented than a lot of the players that played in the 80s and 90s, because LeBron's era and my era of basketball has had so much more exposure to basketball when it comes to club ball and just all that other stuff. In the 80s and 90s, you didn't have as much exposure. You didn't have as much time to be able to develop and work with private coaches or be able to play in club leagues and stuff like that. It was very limited, and you just didn't have as much. Now, I didn't grow up in that era, so I couldn't tell you the club situation. So if anybody if anybody was alive during that time and would like to share with me kind of how, if there were clubs back then or not, and I know I'm saying back then it was a super long time ago. I'm sorry to all you people that were alive back then and then, feel old now. I didn't intend it to be that way, but yeah, I just think the exposure to basketball is just so much bigger nowadays. It just felt like baseball was kind of the big topic back in the 80s and 90s compared to what basketball is now, which basketball and football is kind of the main focal point to at least in the US right now. And the world has really caught up in basketball as well. So that's also led to better skill nowadays. So yes, of course, LeBron's opponents and teammates are going to be significantly better nowadays because there's more exposure. But we can't just say that LeBron or Jordan played against plumbers, because there were some very, very good players back then that could easily play nowadays and probably be some of the better players in the league. But overall, to conclude this, I personally think it's hard to determine who the GOAT is based off of, just two players that played completely different positions and in different eras of basketball. I think, Michael Jordan obviously was a shooting guard playing in the 80s and 90s, and LeBron James is a forward/wing that's playing in the 2000s era. It's a completely different style of basketball. It's completely different. It's like if you compared, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to Steph Curry, who would win in a one-on-one. It's like, well, probably Kareem Abdul-Jabbar if Kareem has the ball, because he's just going to back him down the whole time. But if Curry has the ball, he's going to dominate because he's going to be able to blow by him, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense to be able to compare them because, there are two different positions, two different types of players, and they played in different eras. But if I were to compare the two based off of who dominated the most in their respected eras, I would think Jordan is a better player compared to how LeBron dominated in his era. I think Jordan had a bigger impact on the game of basketball as well. Like, everybody wanted to be like Michael Jordan back in the early 2000s. Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, all these players trying to, basically mirror Jordan's game. And a lot of players aren't really doing that for LeBron. A lot of players are a lot of kids nowadays are trying to be like Steph Curry, let's be honest, because everybody's just chucking up threes. But I'm not going to try to take away anything from LeBron. I think Jordan, in my opinion, is my GOAT. I'm not just saying that because I'm a Bulls fan. I just think Jordan was just the more dominant player, and he's accomplished more in less time than LeBron has done so far. Will my opinion change on this? Who knows? If LeBron wins, 2 more championships before he retires, I could definitely probably say LeBron's the GOAT. But as of now, I think Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time to ever touch a basketball. Oh my goodness, I cannot talk right now. But anyways, I want to hear your guys' opinion on who you think the GOAT is. I think this is all opinion based. You cannot technically determine who the GOAT is. I just tried to do my best to be able to show you who I think is the GOAT. But anyways, comment down below who you think the GOAT is in NBA history. And if you want to, debate with me in the comments, I'm totally down to do that. I think it's really fun to be able to do that, but let's do it in a nice and respectful manner. But anyways, that's going to be the end of podcast number 46 of Sports Talk with JWock. If you want to check me out on any social media platform, I am there except Facebook. Facebook is still a work in progress. I apologize. It's been kind of delayed as of late. So don't be looking on Facebook if you're trying to find news. Check me out on Instagram at sportstalkwith_JWock3. Check me out on Spotify at Sports Talk with JWock if you just want to listen to the podcast. Check me out on TikTok at Sports Talk with JWock. And that's going to be the end of this episode. I can't wait to see you all next week, where we will be talking about March Madness and, who I think could be some sneaky good teams going into March Madness. And if you want to hear more about that, make sure to stay tuned for this next episode. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and I hope you all have an amazing week. God bless.